Hey, we're recording this on Sunday, September 8th, and I just want to make sure everybody knows this fact. All right, I brought this up a while ago. People talk about, well, they got rid of this bad guy and they got rid of that bad guy. And one of the bad guys that nobody ever seems to talk about is James Angleton, head of counterintelligence, probably the person most responsible for the assassination of Kennedy, certainly the cover-up. He handled the cover-up for decades or for a decade until they booted him out. Um, Very important figure. But of course, when you fire one guy, it's a comic book, right? Oh, we fired him. He's gone. The problem's gone. Well, that guy had lieutenants. That guy had staff. That guy had a whole network of people. And in Angleton's case, he'd already been head of counterintelligence for the CIA for over 20 years. So he had a network of thousands of people. They weren't fired. They didn't go anywhere. All right. So what I said was, if you want to know something very important, know who Angleton left behind when he was fired, when he was removed. Who were all his lieutenants, his proteges, his hitmen, his button men? Who were they? Well, a good place to start figuring that out is to go back to the Hunter Biden laptop story. Remember, we had all these brilliant, distinguished, ethical, active, and retired intelligence community leaders assert that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. They were lying. They were frauds. They are traitors to the country. They got away with it. And we have their names. We know who they are. But what isn't, and everybody forgets that, right? But what people either have forgotten or don't know, it was Anthony Blinken. It was Anthony Blinken that organized that letter. All right. So somebody came up with the idea. Maybe it was Blinken himself. And Blinken went around and knocked on lots of doors and called lots of people and found 50 plus uh, corrupt intelligence agency people to sign their name to a letter claiming that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. So if you want to know who the descendants of James Jesus Angleton are, and he's an important name. If you've missed our previous programs, he's probably one of the certainly the top five, maybe top three of people we should be looking at when we try to understand who killed John and Robert Kennedy. And strangely enough, the very well-funded assassination research community just can't seem to mention his name. But in any event, when they fired him in the 70s, they acted like, oh, he was one bad apple, bad guy, he's gone. Well, obviously, he left dozens, scores, hundreds, and indirectly thousands of, quote, disciples essentially behind. So here's the story. It was about a year old now. Biden campaign and Blinken, and he was rewarded, right? He's Secretary of State now, I believe. They orchestrated the letter to discredit the Hunter Biden laptop story, ex-CIA official says. Former CIA official testified that then Biden campaign senior advisor and now Secretary of State Antony Blinken played a role. Okay. Former CIA Deputy Director Michael Morell testified before the House committee. Blah, blah, blah. Revealed that Blinken was the impetus. In other words, it was his idea. Um, and either he or his stooges went around and made sure all these criminals and crooks, also known as former intelligence officers, officials, signed the letter falsely discrediting the New York Post story. There's no way Biden would have been elected had that story been perceived for what it was, real, right? But he became president. So 51 former intelligence officials under the direction of Antony Blinken participated in election interference and put a man in the White House who's been a disaster for the country. Um, who were some of the heroes that signed that letter? Well, John Brennan, of course, that's Obama's CIA director. James Clapper, of course. Leon Panetta, of course. And there we go. A little bit of history. that somehow they have been able to hide. So Jordan and Turner, who I guess are Congress people, are demanding Blinken provide the material to help them advance their oversight. They demanded Blinken identify the people he communicated with about drafting the statement and produce all documents referring to the statement. So, these guys don't just sit down and write something. It's a draft, and then 10 people read it and they change the commas, and they got to justify their existence. So there were drafts and there were people involved. um, Fox News first reported the existence of some type of investigation involving Hunter Biden in October 2020. FBI had subpoenaed the laptop. Anyway, it's not clear that Blinken has actually done what he was told to do, but it's pretty clear that he is the guy that orchestrated. So the guy that's Secretary of State, the guy that goes up on stage every day and justifies the slaughter and maiming of children in America's name, that's the guy that got these 51 corrupt former intelligence officials to sign a fraudulent document that helped uh, Joe Biden is responsible, really, for Joe Biden becoming president of the United States the last 4 years. So if you like the last 4 years, regardless of how you feel about Trump, if you like the last 4 years, you can thank these 51 traitors. And I bet, take this full circle, I bet a whole bunch of them have a genealogy that brings them back to James Jesus Angleton, who almost certainly was one of the ringleaders of the assassination of both John and Robert Kennedy, happens to have been a leading American Zionist, happens to have been head of counterintelligence for CIA, happens to have also simultaneously and inexplicably been head of the Israeli desk for the CIA, happens to be one of the founders of the Mossad, and on it goes. And you don't know any of this because none of the $1 million podcasters and their esteemed guests have ever bothered to tell you.